We have some esteemed panelists tonight. Christina Farr from VentureBeat, Ton Lee from Emotiv Insight, and Redg Snodgrass from Stained Glass Labs and Glazed Conference. However, before we get started, I wanted to introduce you to Ryan, who is the director of Pivotal Labs, and he's going to say a few words to you about all the wonderful things that are going on here. And I'm Sean with Graffiti PR. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. I just wanted to get up and very briefly say welcome to Pivotal Labs. You are in our headquarters, which is here in San Francisco. Pivotal Labs is a software consulting company. We help our clients build great web and mobile software products. We have about 500 consultants around the country in various offices and in Canada. What we do here, just very briefly, is partner with our clients to build their products, web and mobile. It's a full service consultancy, so we offer software engineering, software design, and product management services. And we partner very closely with our clients where we actually bring them into our office and build a team that's a mix of folks from our clients and folks from our side and build the product together. And we've worked with every client that you've ever heard of, everyone from Google to eBay to Facebook to Instagram, to help them build their products behind the scenes. So again, I just wanted to say welcome to the space here. We're really excited to be hosting the Wearable event tonight. And thank you all for coming.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know it's a Thursday night, and I hope you were lured by the idea of talking about wearables and not just the free booze and pizza. So we actually did not do any kind of boring prep calls for this panel because we wanted to keep things really light and conversational. And this also means that these two have to answer all of my questions, so they're in trouble. Wearables, it's just an enormous trend. I, personally realized this when I had a big story about the Samsung Galaxy Gear. I broke it about a week early, and I just have never seen a piece be so well read. It was insane. I had hate websites set up against me just because people thought it was ugly and they just couldn't bear it, and they thought I had somehow doctored this Galaxy Gear. No offense to anyone from Samsung in the room. But that got me really thinking that this is perceived to be the future for a lot of people, and I'm so excited to see so many of you here wearing Google Glass. So wearables, let's just start with a very general question. What do you currently own? What is your experience with wearables on a real day-to-day basis?
So I own a Misfit Shine, a Jawbone hip-up band, and a Nike Fuel band. And I am not wearing any of them right now, unfortunately.
I have a Jawbone up. I have some new stuff from Monster we can't totally talk about. I've got a Basis watch, because I love the guys so much. And then we have glass that we share around the office, but I don't get to take it. The engineers get to keep it.
So, Ton, I've noticed that you own some wearables, but you're not wearing any of them tonight, and you're also wearing a very beautiful, professional-looking outfit. Is that because, the wearable doesn't really have much kind of fashion yet? And, if so, do you think that the solution is for wearable makers to court the fashion industry?
For me, it's not so much about the fashion-centric aspect of it, because the Misfit Shine product is really quite fashionable and would go quite nicely with this outfit. I think that's not really my issue. My issue is really around the fact that the physical tracking alone, after about a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I get a very good sense of what I'm doing, and it doesn't give me a lot of insight, new insights about myself. And I think that's the challenge with wearables, there's no translation to something like a metric that makes sense to me. For example, how many kilocalories is that, right? How many kilojoules have I burnt? How much calories is that? What does that translate to? How does that link with the food that I've consumed? And so that becomes something that I might be interested in tracking. There's still a little bit of a gap between the metric, which is the number of steps that I've taken, and what that actually really translates to.
Yeah, I had mine on earlier, but I loaned it to someone during this event just because they wanted to check it out and look fashionable. I think I agree to some degree. I think what happens is that we have this, Xbox 360 demand and expectation from the consumer, and we're really still in this Atari marketplace, and so we're really still trying to figure that out. But I mean, at the end of the day, until we start kind of rocking these things out, understanding them, and until the apps come, like we're not going to see anything. And so the same thing that happened with the iPhone became like an integral part of you when other people were able to take it, be creative, and build things that were useful for us on a day-to-day life. And so as these platforms open up, I think there's going to be some really sexy stuff happen. So I mean, I wear mine pretty much every day, even when it dies, just because I always get that question. Right? Why do you have this accelerator? Where's your wearable? I'm like, it's on me, it's my underwear, or whatever. But, maybe. But anyway.
One of the things that I noticed, or problems with the Galaxy Gear when it first came out, is it was very clunky. It was actually, the watch face was bigger than my actual wrist. And I think a lot of the reason for that is they tried to pour every feature and piece of functionality possible into this device. So it has, the camera, it has speakers in the clasp, and so they're doing everything at once. They're doing health and fitness, and they're also trying to do fashion and accessories, and then social media too. So what do you think that consumers actually want from a wearable?
A blank slate. I think that's part. They let the technology groups go crazy and build out feature after feature, because if we have this one feature, people will buy it, and that's not the case. Give a blank slate, allow people to build and create things on top of this platform, and then you'll start to see some of the cool things emerge. The iPhone was basic, was very simple and very, very basic. There weren't a ton of features on it, and yet people took those features they have and they created creative things around them, and because there was hope in a marketplace, people were willing to kind of push out there. As long as these platforms are a little bit basic and elemental and beautiful or not, just give us the basic pieces and the building blocks, and the community will build cool shit behind it. I think that's part of the problem is they think that they got to build every, like they got to pull every fucking thing in there, and it's just not important. What's important is giving the basic, building blocks to be creative, and that's what's needed across the board. And if these watch manufacturers can just all collaborate, they'll see something actually really beautiful happen, which is an ecosystem that works, not the Symbian ecosystem, which is where we're moving towards.
I think for me, it's a combination of different things. So I look at my health as a holistic thing. So I'm interested in not just tracking my physical health, but I'm also interested in tracking my cognitive health as well. And I think that everything that we do in our everyday life, whether it's something like we're driving our car home, or we're going to work and perform at the office, or we're sitting around this room trying to listen to new information, process that, or it's interacting with friends at a dinner party. We're using our brain all the time. We have to engage memory networks, we have to engage our higher executive functions, and yet right now, there's really no conversation, there isn't a device out there that allows us to track our cognitive performance alongside our physical health. And I think that marriage between that holistic view of what's going on, we know that yes, physical activity is really important. It does help to build new networks in the brain. It does optimize your physical performance, and that does translate to cognitive benefits as well. Sleep is a very important part of maintaining brain fitness. Reduce levels of stress. But how do we know exactly what's going on in our brain without these biometrics? And right now, there's no device that allows us to do that. And so that's the idea that we're trying to solve, is to bring in, obviously I completely agree with Reg. I think having an open platform that allows developers and researchers to extend beyond what you create from the ground up at the very beginning is very important. But at the same time, being able to think about wearables in a much more comprehensive way allows you to open up more possibilities, because I think it's the action of all of these devices, all of these metrics, that then allows you to gather big data around and other insights that you otherwise would not get with just the step metrics.
I just want to add to it. By the way, I love your platform, and I love that you talk about the self-act. It's really like one of the promises of wearables is this self-actualization, and what you guys do with the brain and understand. I mean, like one of my engineers is working really hard to wire our house so that when I think I want my lights off, they turn off, right? And that's the promise of your platform. There's like really cool stuff that can happen from it, more than just the cognitive side. I think that that's the part that's going to get us to geek out, because for me, I mean, my mental health is, you should see the girls I date. It's very obvious that I don't care. But I love what you guys do, and there's so much promise in understanding how the brain works and being able to leverage that as part of a platform, which will work in this stuff. I mean, who doesn't want to think, man, I want my light off for it to turn off? I'm an expert at throwing a pillow and hitting a light switch across the room and turning it off. I'm pretty badass at that, but I would much rather do that with my mind.
Or turn off your hair straightener.
Yeah.
So I just want to do a quick audience struggle. How many of you actually own a wearable? Right, you. Well, I guess we're at a wearables panel, so not all that surprising. You know, I'm going to ask you two categories. One is health and fitness, and the other one is social. So that includes taking pictures and posting to social media. How many of you would prefer to use it or mainly use it for health and fitness? What about social? That's really interesting. I'd say it's probably about 90% for health and fitness. And just to focus on that then, health and fitness, I'm getting, you know, I love being able to see that I've, you know, maybe 300 steps today, or I don't know, whatever this pedometer is going to tell me in my device, but I feel like there's nothing really all that actionable yet that's going to make me healthier from having a wearable. How far away do you think we are from producing devices that are going to be able to give us sort of real, useful information that will make, you know, us healthier and fitter and happier?
I think it's going to happen within the next 12 to 18 months. We're not far away. I think we have devices. We're starting to garner interesting data. It's going to take a little bit of time for all of the APIs to become, you know, to be more integrated with each other. But I think we're not all that far away, and most devices now are opening up their APIs. And so we're going to see a proliferation of new applications. So you're going to start to see more stickiness. So people like me who kind of drop off after 3 weeks will find new reasons for coming back onto the platform.
Yeah, I mean, that's the promise of the next iteration of apps, because I think the mobile app is kind of dead anyway. But I think it's within the next 12 months. I think there's already things that can tell what we're drinking and what we're eating, and then, you know, eventually, like, we'll be able to understand emotion. Like, emotion is an important part of your exercise regime, what you eat, and everything else like that. The problem is it's so damn hard for us to input everything, and that's a big problem. But if there's a platform that understands what I'm eating and can sync up with my brainwaves to understand how I feel, then all of a sudden we start to understand each other better. And that's the promise of wearable technology. It's this self-actualization piece, but also this being able to better connect to the collective as a whole. I think it's really important for us. You know, I think all technology, and I can argue this till the sun goes down, maybe I have to smoke weed or whatever to get it down, but what's important is like technology was made for us to connect and to interact better with other people. And if we don't have that interaction and that connection point, then what's the big deal for it? And so from the self-actualized point, I think it's paramount. I think it's super important. I think it's less than 12 months away. We just still don't understand how to work big data sets yet. And we, you know, guess what? Real time doesn't even really exist for what you think it is. So it's not even fucking there. So these are things that we have to be able to do. We just pretend like we've got it, and then maybe it happens. But yeah, I'm with you. 12 months.
So I definitely want to return to this point about big data and analytics, because I agree with you, and I think it's a very, very hyped up space. But back to sort of where you said that technology was made for us to connect. You know, when you're wearing a Google Glass, no offense to people that might be wearing it now, you know, it's kind of makes for an awkward conversational experience. There's literally a camera mounted to the side of your face. And I often wonder whether or not wearables are going to make us more or less social. And I can definitely see the argument that it means you don't bring your cell phone out or your iPhone. Maybe you just have this device that just kind of, it's a little bit more subtle, it's on your wrist, and you get an email and you can see it and you can brush it aside. But also, you know, having this thing on your face, like, you know, the counterpoint is we're just going to be just constantly doing other things instead of paying attention to each other. So where do you sort of come down on that side of the debate?
I'll go. So I think it's meant to enhance conversation. Like, we don't have the same communication, not just because you're you, Chrissy, but just because you're British, you use different words. No one knows that you are because you're so good at hiding it, right? But with, like, there are words that come up. If while you're talking, a word pops up and it allows me to understand and communicate with you better, like, that brings it together. I think the apps that will win and the things that will matter, and I've said this before, you know, even over at Pinterest, it's the entrepreneurs that will win in this new space are the ones that understand empathy. And the applications and the platforms that are created that best allow people to empathize with each other, and where empathy is actually kind of rules the day, that's the ones that will be significant. That's the ones that will win long term in this type of interaction. So it's not very empathetic with me talking to you and looking at a Tumblr that's showing pictures of
cat gifs.
I was going to go elsewhere, but cat gifs, right? Like, that's just not, that's not going to happen. But if there are apps that allow us to understand each other better, I think those are going to be the ones that win long term, because we're still animal. We still want to connect with people. And if I'm distracted while I'm talking to you, you're not going to want to connect with me long term. And I think that's where the river runs, and that's what will kind of drive this market.
And you're not distracted when you're wearing glass?
Oh man, you know, come on, I'm distracted right now. But in general, no. I think that there's opportunities for it to be enhanced. But that's when the apps come. The apps aren't there. It's not really there. Guess what? There are no apps right now. So we'll see.
I like your question. I think that that's the paradigm that we were focused around earlier with wearable technology. It has to be fashionable, or it has to be invisible, or it has to be discreet. It has to be something that you kind of doesn't call to people's attention that you're wearing something. I think what Google Glass did with this product is that it's very visible, and I think it's really helped us with our device, the Insight, because our device, by definition, because it's a brain scanner, it has to be worn on your head. So it has to be something that's a visible technology. And so one thing that I would say is, yes, not everybody will feel comfortable wearing it. It is unusual to wear something on your head. It will take time for the community to accept it at large. But don't forget that we're just seeing the very first iteration of these products emerge. There's technologies will come within the next 5 years that will transform radically the form factor of these devices, and they will become a lot more embedded. I think if you define wearables, it's really just an augmentation of capacity, if you think about that sort of in that light. So wearables in the sense that you're wearing something external to your body, or something that's embedded in your body that's not natural to the current biological systems, but it extends your capacity, right? So I see that as being the definition of wearables, not necessarily something that's overtly visible, because that's what it is today. But we're talking about, you know, like computers in the 70s. It's going to transform so radically in the next, 5-10 years.
That's fascinating. Most of the CEOs of what I would call wearables companies that I meet will say, I'm not a wearable maker, we're a data company, or we're an analytics company, because they know that, it's a gadget and it's going to get commoditized quickly, and we're going to go from wearables on your body to embeddables, and God knows what's going to be coming next. So if you are a data company, then let's get back to this idea of analytics. So we're thinking now also about how do we make money from these devices, and if we're giving away all of our data to consumers, where's the monetization strategy? I mean, I would argue that a lot of this data is being held back from us while companies in the early stages try to figure out what they keep private and what they give away and in what form.
I think it's really early days, but the conversation with the consumer really needs to be around this notion of value, right? What can you add, how can you add value to a consumer to provide them with meaningful metrics that make sense to them, first and foremost? Because just on that individual level, it really makes a big difference. I know from the standpoint of just looking at the brain is a very interesting system because it's changing every day in response to the activities that you undertake, the experiences that you have. It's not a stagnant system. So unlike the the thinking that we had a decade ago. The brain is a system that is constantly able to learn and adapt and rewire itself. And so because of that, it's a system that's much more difficult by definition to study. You can't assume that your brain today, once I've measured it, it'll look the same 5 days from now. It will actually even look different tomorrow. And so that constant evolution of the brain means that if you want to know something about yourself, you need to look at it on a much more frequent basis. And so that longitudinal recording, just for your own benefit, is very, very valuable. So I think that data, that insight that you can get just as a private individual, once you start to collect longitudinal data about yourself, can be already very transformative. I mean, we know that we're all living much longer lives. We're all at risk of conditions, neurological conditions that can be very debilitating, whether it be very common conditions like anxiety, depression, or other complex diseases like dementia, Alzheimer's. There are so many different conditions, and when we're looking at the kind of chronic conditions that so many of us now, with our advanced civilizations that we're living in, with the kind of consumption that we have, diabetes and other forms of, and other conditions that we have, compound the challenges and the implications on our brain. And so there is a real need for us to care more about this. And so my thinking is, in terms of data, we have the potential to completely transform the way that we look at the brain. Because in the past, we only study brains when there's a problem with it. Think about it. Most people in this room, how many of you have actually had a brain scan? Brain scan?
MRI.
Yeah. MRI, okay. So probably about 10% of the room has had any form of brain scan. And how many of you had it done more than 5 times? So, okay, so 1 person out of that group. So so your data at best is lumpy. And we know that if you only have very, very lumpy data about your own networks, then the chances of when something goes wrong, the chances of someone being able to say, well, what was your baseline and how has it changed is very, very, very difficult. And so the opportunity to empower individuals to start to collect and amass a larger amount of information about themselves is going to really transform the landscape around what we can understand, what kind of insights we can start to infer around some of these conditions. So I think that there's some great opportunities. It's still a very challenging question around how do you court the consumer, and what data do you keep as a company? How do you de-anonymize the data, and really, can you really properly de-anonymize the data? Because as we know, you only need a few additional features, and say 6 to 8 features, and you can kind of like start to piece together who they are. So it does become very, very difficult, this issue of anonymity, but I think that there is enough value there that we really need to have an open conversation. That's why we're trying to do this now.
I think so around 300 AD, whenever the first glasses, I'm making that up, I don't know if that's it, whenever the first, this guy's like, hey, put these lenses on, you'll see better, and the guy put them on, and then he immediately went out and burnt the other guy at the stake because he was like, this looks ugly, and I can't believe that, but now it's your magic, right? I think that was it's an important thing. We wear technology all the time, whether watches or glasses, we just have it, and it changes our perspective. I don't know how many of you guys have had glasses your whole lives, but when you were a kid, you were made fun of, but you got over it because you had to see, right? And that in and of itself is data, and that data was useful to you so that you could understand the world around you. But it was packaged in a way that you could understand and leverage that data to go and do other things. My batting average went up 100 points when I put glasses on, and that was good before. Just kidding. but still, I mean, but that's the thing. Being able to package the data in a way that you can actually understand and interpret it is paramount, and that's just it. It's being able to take all those different pain points or whatever, and put it in a way for you to actually clearly understand the world around you. When you're able to take that data, be it brain or body, or I don't know if you guys have ever never mind. I'll tell you that story later. But if you've ever taken data to really understand certain things about you in a way that makes you better at something, like it's valuable and you overcome those things. People will be wearing the Emotiv device around as soon as they can understand the value of it. Now I'm going to start checking it out because I know my brain has got to change every like 3 or 4 hours, especially with the stuff I do to it. But this is the thing. It's right. And the problem is like the people are so smart that put these devices together that they don't know how to, quote, empathize or show empathy to really pull out what's really important for me. And you know what it is? It's something as easy as I know when I drink a beer I feel like shit, but I can drink whiskey all night long, and so I should probably drink whiskey. Or I know if I have a cheeseburger at 4, you know, what happens to my mind and my body affects how I work the rest of the night or how I do those things. Those little pieces of data or information are what's very, very valuable. Or when I hold your hand, Chrissy, you know, things happen. Not that I have before, but that's the thing. Like, I want to know how, if it affects me in a way that's really, really positive, or if I'm like, oh, I'm stressed out because some girl's gonna walk around the corner and see me. Like that's, but that's the data. Like those are the weird data points that a lot of people won't empathize with, because those are the things that are honestly the girl around the corner thing that was more funny, but those, figuring out what the important pieces are to give to me at that opportune time are what's really going to move this forward, where consumers are going to be like, you know, I got a square piece of plastic on my face and I don't really give a shit because, you know, I see better, I understand better, I connect better with other people. And so when it comes to big data, it's, you know, we're still really shitty about being able to interpret it for the common person. I don't care who you are, it's really, really hard to do. And so of course they hold data back, you know, basis in everybody, and it's just because they don't really know how to empathetically position it to somebody so that they understand themselves better. And until they do, like, imagine if you just had a big giant data pipe of all this data. Like that's the worst thing about 23andMe, right? Is it's partially full of shit, because all they do is they send you a bunch of stuff that you don't understand. You want to get somebody upset? Let somebody from 23andMe that has a report try to talk to a geneticist about how important it is. That geneticist is like, you don't even understand what they're telling you. Yeah. Of course, we're all a little bit African, right? I mean, it's like we're all a certain percentage, because that's a point of data. That's a data point that we don't yet understand, and somebody that's an expert has to interpret it to the common person. And so that's what really is missing, is super intelligent, empathetic people being able to translate the differences in your brain from hour to hour into an intelligible way that makes sense, that you apply back to your life, that you can move forward with. And so that's, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been really already quite impressed by some of the applications, especially for healthcare. And I think one of the key pieces that wearables is already providing value is doctors used to just see you when you were sick. So that's all the data that they ever got. And now they can get data on you when you're healthy. Another kind of, aside from giving you value by telling you about when you should eat a hamburger, or God knows what else, but I don't know, have you guys ever heard of a company in Israel called Orcam Technologies? Yeah. This was one that I covered last week. And it, you know, it's kind of a personal story for me, because I have a lot of family members who are blind. And they had been pinging me and saying, you know, have you heard of Orcam? And I looked into it, and it's this company that provides a new wearable that literally helps people who are nearly blind read. You just point, like, or turn your head towards something, and will say, you know, that's what's in front of you, or the traffic light's changing, or even read a book out loud for you. So stories like that, when it comes to wearables, I mean, that's the point where I'm just blown away. So, you know, healthcare, it seems like that's probably the strongest application right now for, you know, where we see wearables going. I realize I've told a story instead of asking a question, but there was a question in there somewhere. Yeah, or if anyone has a question, we can.
As someone that's intimately involved in wearable space, we're keenly aware of like battery life is one of the Achilles heels of wearable right now. I mean, you know, as all the processing power you can fit in a device, if you can't have battery, you know, you're not going to be able to get people to use it for a full day.
That was a mobile like problem, right? It's like, oh my God, these mobile phones won't last with batteries. The mobile market will never take off, or the screen's too small to create applications. I've heard this shit before, right? It's everybody that was saying that. I mean, you know, the difference in wearables is if you're 1 degree Celsius too hot or too cold, you begin to create cancer. Like that's the thing that's a big issue. Batteries will extend and figure it out. And if a platform is more engaging, guess what? The battery goes down, but it's more engaging. And so it's just one of those things. I mean, like the battery power is something that needs to be solved.
There are companies that are pretty close to working on that, so we'll be able to charge our devices once a week instead of every, 6 hours.
Have you seen anything that comes up in the battery space, maybe in the next 12 months or so, that will kind of jump the gap?
Yeah, it's not a wearable, but look at a technology called Artica. It's very under the radar, but military technology that's being commercially applied for that search. They don't even know yet, it's so early, but that's kind of one of the examples of a technology that I've seen that's trying to do that. Sasha?
So how do you think, and I think you touched on this earlier on, but how do you think this touches social fabric? So 20 years ago, if I made a mistake, no one would find out. 5 years ago, if I made a mistake, and I was even remotely known in the tech world, somebody would probably blog about it, and it would get written somewhere. And if you really wanted to find it, you could search it. And there was this whole thing for the last 2 years. Whatever you do or whatever is on your phone, be prepared to be on the front page of the New York Times. Now we're going to a world where I look at you and you'll be able to see the information almost in 3 seconds. I mean, how does that change social fabric and the fact that we make mistakes, and how does that affect us as a population?
I think we all need to lead very moral lives. Over to Reg.
I believe in radical transparency for a reason, because I don't think you can really keep anything there. I mean, there's a great picture of me on the VentureBeat, on a desk in VentureBeat, wearing nothing but a phone, because I feel like that's what entrepreneurs feel when they go in there, right? Just naked. But I think it's good, and here's what I mean. It's good that people see that other people make mistakes, because it allows for people to be more real. And not that, this is a very existential question, right? I believe that it's okay to make mistakes and to be real and to be honest and to say things that you feel to a certain degree, with intent to help people and not to harm them, right? Granted, sometimes me streaking may have harmed people, but not because, like, never mind. But what I'm saying is I think that it's good. I think that it's good that we're connected. It's good that we understand each other better. The more that you see that your neighbor makes mistakes and has problems, or issues, or even maybe looks at porn from time to time, like, it just allows you to realize that they're just kind of, I said porn, they got all itchy. I don't know why. But the fact of the matter is like, we all do those things. And it's okay to some degree, as long as you're not misrepresenting who you are. And I think that that's a good world, not a bad one, when we're able to understand that people are real. I have a piece that I've never published with Gavin Newsom about digital exhaust asphyxiation. Maybe you should finish it. You're way better writer than me. But like, you should never be choked out about being honest and being who you are. You should just be that way. And my hope is that wearables make us a less judgmental society in that regard.
I think you're absolutely right that there are some risks. I think from the social fabric standpoint, there's also another risk that big data imposes on us, which is around machine learning. If we don't understand that these are just predictive tools, right? So big data allows machine learning to derive features that we otherwise would not be able to see. So we're able to make better predictions as to what may occur. These are just predictions. There's a higher probability given all of the circumstantial facts and features, but it's only a probability. And so there is always a risk that sometimes we may misread these probabilities as being fact, right? And so I think that's really the bigger risk that we have. So when it comes to healthcare, if these probabilities are interpreted as being so high that then your insurance premium changes, or you're deemed to have the condition that you already do not, that right now you don't have, then I think that's where we're going to really radically have issues, right? And so ultimately, I think this is where the challenges that we have are. So with big data, it's a very empowering platform, but there are certainly significant risks if we don't temper our understanding of what it is, like really make sure that we really truly acknowledge its strength for what it is and its limitations for what they are as well. I think that's really important.
I'd like to address asking you about old systems, sort of springboarding off of what you just talked about, such as education. It holds to dinosaur standards, and I'd like to know how you see wearables risking, even to the extent of intruding into these old systems, and how you might see them making impact, making wearables impact.
So in the context of learning, I think wearables that track the brain have tremendous opportunities. The reason for that is because I alluded to the fact that the brain is a learning system. It's really a learning machine. Most of us, after the critical period closes, so the brain basically has two learning phases. The first is up to around puberty. So from the time you're born until around puberty, it's just a machine that absorbs by exposure. So all it needs is you expose it to something and it will learn very, very quickly. It requires very little effort. Once that period closes, the brain is essentially mature, and that applies to all of us. We actually require focused attention and effort in order to learn new things. Now, most of us as adults find it more difficult, and therefore we give up earlier. Now, if we understand the metric that we need is focused attention, then we can start to measure specifically for that. So are you really paying attention? How many hours are you paying attention? How many minutes have you paid attention in this learning segment? And therefore, when are you going to get to the point, based on statistical metrics, when are you likely to achieve a state of, oh, okay, I get this epiphany moment where, you know how sometimes when you're learning something, you don't know why, but all of a sudden it all just makes sense. That elusive period of time exists because there's a certain amount of focused attention that we've devoted to a task. And so I think there's a huge opportunity in order to give people access to these metrics about themselves, about learning, so that you can start to look at, you know, how do you ensure that a child is paying attention? How do you ensure an adult is interested and engaged and really focused on the task? And this opens up the possibilities for online learning platforms as well, because our delivery mechanisms for learning is changing so rapidly. So in classroom learning is very different. It's very easy for a teacher to see if someone's paying attention. When it's online, it's hard to tell if the person's still there, or they've just walked away and got pizza or some cereal or whatever it is. And so it's much more difficult to really gauge that. And so I think it opens up more possibilities for that.